Good day. In this series, the second video, that's still part of the topic, the increase of the executive power at the cost of the legislative and the judiciary, where we, in the first video, have looked at the context of Namibia in terms of increasing executive power, and in terms of the global trend of an increase of executive power given COVID-19 and the World Economic Forum. In this case, in this video, we are going to look at the increase of executive power specific in Namibia with reference to the presidential power. If we look at the constitution, we will see that the president appoints a number of people. He's the head of the government. He's elected directly by the people, and he's accountable directly to the people, unlike South Africa, where he's indirectly elected, and also in America, where he's indirectly elected. Now, the president appoints all the cabinet members, and he can consult them and listen to them or not listen to them and all. That means that although the members of cabinet are also most often also members of parliament, and they are first and foremost accountable to the president and not to the parliament, because they have a double accountability system. Their accountability lies rather more with the president than with the parliament. Then it's also worthwhile to mention that the people in parliament are elected by the voters, eligible voters in Namibia, but they can't elect the people themselves. The political parties and the party structures decide who's on the voting list on the ballot paper. So voters can only vote for parties and not for specific people. And that means that parliamentarians are also not directly accountable to the voters, because we use a political representation system where once you have a quota and you are number one on the party list, and then also number one in terms of the party's preference on the ballot paper, then you got a quota of votes, then you are elected to parliament. But everybody represents you in parliament as a voter, and nobody is specific. Now that is also discussion for another purpose. For this purpose, it's good to realize that members of cabinet are first and foremost appointed and accountable to the president that appoints them. And this also means that there are 8 members appointed to parliament by the president himself, out of 104. That means 96 parliamentary seats are open for to be voted for and represent specific political parties, while the president appoints 8% of them. Not 8%, 8 people actually to parliament. That's mostly people that he wants to have a seat in parliament, but that are not being elected or not on the party list of the ballot paper, and that haven't made the quota, because a quota is based on the number of eligible voters that casted their votes divided by the 96 seats in parliament. And some countries use that formula where they say 96 plus 1 divided by the number of eligible voters. However, in Namibia, it seems that we only use the 96 divided by the number of eligible voters to arrive at a at a quota for the whole country that is one constituency. Now, in 2014, the parliament consisted of about 78, and the late President Hage Geingob increased the parliament from, and now I'm referring specific to the National Assembly, from 78 to 104. That means an increase of 33.33%. And then also in 2014, the regional councils, there were 13 councils and 2 representatives from each region. That means 26 in total. And thereafter, President Geingob used his influence to increase also the regional councils from 26 to 42. That also represent an increase of about 69%, because it's 18 of 26. That means a substantial increase. The reason for that was probably to also reward people that supported him in order to become the presidential candidate for the ruling party. Although other people of the party will say that is not the case. However, that is exactly what happened in terms of the numbers as provided. Now, the president also previously in the time of President Pohamba, the second president of the Republic of Namibia, he amended also contributed to the amendment of the Constitution to state that the president appoints the governors of the regions. Now, currently there are 14 regions, and that means 14 people of 42 of the National Council that represent the regions are appointed by the president, and they report directly to the president to oversee the execution of the policies and the instructions of the president himself. And that means that 33.33% of all people representing the regional councils in the National Council are appointed also by the president. Now, if you take that in context with the fact that the president also appoints 8 of 104 people to the National Assembly, that means about 6.9%. That means that the president has quite a substantial influence on both the National Assembly, on the National Council, as well as appointing all the members of cabinet. Now, that is not the end of the presidential capacity to appoint other people. The president also appoints the head of the National Planning Commission, the Director General, that also sits in Parliament, and that's also regarded as a minister. Then he also appoints the Director General of the Anti-Corruption Commission. He appoints the Auditor General, the Attorney General, the Prosecutor General, the Chief of the National Police, the Chief of the Defence Force, the Chief of the prisons, and he also appoints all the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court based on the recommendation of the Judicial Service Commission, that he also have an influence on to be appointed. And then he also appointed the chairman of the or the members of the Public Service Commission that oversee the policies and procedures of the public service the, so that and also the secretary to cabinet. And then obviously we know that the president have a substantial influence in the appointment of people in other positions in parliament, not in parliament, but also in terms of the public service. Because we use an affirmative action system that's most not based on merit, and we also have a black empowerment policy that's not based on merit, and we also have what we can call a patronage system that's based on political preference, similar to what America use as what we call the spoils system. Now, one can see that the president has got substantial influence in terms of appointing so many people. He's also the head of the army. He can declare war. He can make presidential decrees and also presidential orders. And he bypassed the parliament when he declared a lockdown in terms of COVID-19. Didn't consult even the parliament. Then the president can also muddle and intervene in the affairs of regional councils, and also withdraw powers extended to the regional councils. He can also intervene in the powers of local authorities. The previous chief of the police has also been appointed as the regional governor of one of the 4 regions. So one see that political affiliation plays a huge role in the appointment of regional governors. We also know that in terms of local government, when there was a fiasco about the extended appointment of the previous police chief, Abraham Kanima, who did an excellent job, that the president intervened in such a case and used his influence in order to make it possible that the Mr. Kanima could stay on, although Kanima was, according to me, have done a great job. The president also intervened when the parliament wanted to build a new parliamentary building. That was very expensive, and he also used his influence to stop that tender. He also used his influence to stop the building of a new airport building. So it's possible to deduct from this that the president has substantial influence beyond then what is only mentioned in the Constitution. And I think that's very important to realize. It is Namibia is a very small state, but given the authoritative power of the president, a person in the position of the president can exploit his position in order to conceal information. The president is not a member of parliament. He only once in a year make the State of the Nation address in parliament. So it is possible to see how influential the presidential power can be, and what have been realized over 34 years, how the presidential power have increased, and that ties into the Namibian trend of the increase of executive power at the cost of the legislative and the judiciary, where we have seen in recent Afrobarometer surveys that the trust in the office of the president, for example, is also have reduced substantially, as well as in parliament. And I also want to say that I forgot one position, and that is the president also appoints the ombudsman. With that, hopefully it's very clear that the president have a very powerful role in a small unitary state like Namibia, where cabinet is at his disposal. He also appoints the prime minister, and he also appoints a deputy prime minister and the vice president. And the vice president position and the deputy prime minister position have been also added to the portfolio of the president in the time of the late President Johan Coetzee, when he came to power for the first time in 2014, 2015. So it's very important to reduce the checks and balances on the extensive position of authority and power of the president in order to prevent a situation where any incumbent can abuse the presidential position. It is also worthwhile to mention that the president cannot be sued for any criminal offense while he's in office. So that means that the president is above the law. He's the only person that's above the law in this country, and it can abuse his position. I certainly know that they have abused his position in the past. The first president also served 3 terms, Mr. Simon Yoma, that became president when he was 60. And also, but other presidents thereafter can only serve 2 terms. President Hage Geingob also served 2 terms, but he didn't finish his second term that was supposed to end in 2025. And he's the only president that actually died while a president. And then a new president was appointed, and that was the vice president that will serve now until the next elections, and the new president will then be appointed in March 2025. So it is also very clear that the president also appoint the Chief Justice, as I have not mentioned yet. And I think that's also important to remember. So the increase of the presidential power contribute very large extent to the increase of the executive power at the cost of the legislative in Namibia. And this trend is not limited only to the president. So in the next video, we will also look at other forms of an increase of executive power in Namibia at the cost of the legislative and executive. Thank you very much.